Also, when we talk about the software supply chain and what it is, I'd like to suggest that this has actually been a concept that's been around since the beginning of engineering. However, the term software supply chain became really widely used, and a lot of people paid attention to it as a result of the activities or events that we experienced of late, starting in 2020 with the SolarWinds supply chain attack, and then, of course, followed immediately after it felt in 2021 with the Log4j shell vulnerability. It is with those occurrences, right, that we now refer to that whole perspective of what's involved in your product or software development. So again, for unknown reasons or unacknowledged reasons, should I say, the concept of software engineering has gotten lost over the years due to the focus, shall I suggest, on timelines and delivery, and losing that need in that the value, shall I say, of having a formal process for looking at what is involved in your software development lifecycle or the supply chain. I remember having a conversation with a friend and colleague who was and still is actually, the CISO for Oracle, Marianne Davidson. So Marianne and I were attending an event, and they were talking about SBOMs. Somebody brought up that four-lettered word that Marianne just was really adamantly against. And I really stopped and pondered, why is that? So you're going to hear me talk a lot about SBOMs, or software bill of materials. And I'd like to suggest that the software supply chain is not an SBOM. An SBOM is really not a bad thing. And I think the really important thing that I'd like you to think about at this point in my conversation with you is that an SBOM is a component of the software supply chain. So I think, if we can, set the pace and the grounds for this conversation around those concepts, I think we'll be doing really well. So now that we have an understanding of what the software supply chain is, I think, of course, the next conversation is, well, why is it so important to use or have a software supply chain? And there's a lot here for me to, shall I say, unpack. So as we learned, again, the hard way through the events of 2020 and 2021 with both the SolarWinds and the Log4j, it's really important to have visibility and understand what each component of your development process consists of. Without that, you have no idea. I can tell you that when Log4j came about, we had no idea that it was even being used in components of the environment. It was only by having that, vulnerability and the exploit of that vulnerability well known worldwide, did we even know that we had Log4j. So I think, bad for us, because it then put us in a reactive space that you really want to get in front of. So what are the advantages of using a software supply chain? I can put them into three areas. The first, of course, being a CISO, I'm going to talk about security. And that enhanced security, what I mean by that is that you are able to reduce the attack surface, right? As long as you can understand and formally have mapped out what are the components and the processes and the people involved in your software development or the software's supply chain, then you're going to be able to identify and address any potential opportunities for vulnerabilities in the components thereof. So it's really important to have that visibility. And so let's move on to the next point. The next point in regards to why it's important to have a software supply chain is the increased transparency and trust. And that would be to have, again, a formalized map to provide a clear picture of all the components.